Ah, I'm live. Hello, everyone. This is my first ever YouTube live for two reasons. Firstly, because there's no reason to record something if you record it and then play it back afterwards. You've got to upload it, and this way I'll just stick on the webcam. It records straight away. The webcam is actually much better quality than any of my other equipment, and presumably it will then save everything afterwards as a normal video. So there we go. Let's see how it works. As long as it saves it afterwards, I don't see why it shouldn't. Anyway, you've seen the title. The title is The End Times, because we are in the end times. Now, I have lived long enough to see how this is unusual. In the past, news used to change all the time. It used to come and go. We'd have bits of good news, bits of bad news, wars everywhere, but everything would come and go. You know, we had the Second World War before I was alive, but that was a specific local issue in Germany which spread. It didn't represent the whole world. Everyone else was against it, which was why it was a world war. But now we have a world war against lies. The end time is very simple, and it's all been predicted. It's in all the holy books, and all the things, the false prophets, the good is bad, bad is good, bitter is sweet, and everything else, everything that George Orwell said in 1984 is real now. And I'm seeing it. Now, the interesting thing about the end times is that the formula about covering up illusion, covering up nasty things, this is all the way that Satan works. Now, Satan is not an individual. Satan is the power of darkness, which can affect anyone and everyone. And it affects people who are possessed by it, whether they're satanic by birth or not, makes no difference. The only difference being that if you're satanic by birth, you'll never change. Whereas if you've been possessed by Satan, it will leave you when you wake up, red pill. But basically, as long as somebody's possessed by satanic energy, it's completely meaningless whether they are born satanic or not, because they are dangerous, full stop. So we have to spot the satanic forces where they are. And it's very easy once you know how, because it's obvious, because what they say in the Bible, which I'm not religious, but the Bible is basically giving you a framework. It's giving you a list of things to look out for, because it's true. And if somebody is going to catch you out, they have to get your trust first. So the devil will do all the nicest things like Barack Obama and give loads of free stuff and then kick you in the arse when you're not looking. And what you have to do is discern the difference between somebody that's genuinely trying to help you and somebody that's trying to trap you in a mouse trap or a animal trap. They put food in it, and then you know, oh great, they're giving me free food, and then they've been caught. So these are the sort of simple things that we have to look out for. Now, until the late 90s, I was busy doing my own thing and not interested in all this. I was into the psychic and the supernatural. There was no sort of forces of good and evil because nothing had happened yet. And then this amazing non-event called global warming, which is what it actually is. There's no such thing as climate change, because climate is changeable. So it's like saying darkness change when it gets light and dark, you know, every day. Well, it's just the natural cycles, as is climate change. Everything about the climate is changeable. So they thought of a completely meaningless term to give you instead of the reality, because that's the one that fits their agenda. They give you something which can't be proven or disproven without going deeper into it. Whereas global warming, it's obvious that some years it's not warming and some years it isn't really happening. And then they say it can get colder, and hang on a minute, it gets colder when it's warming, slight problem. So they had to twist it around. Anyway, that's what woke me up, because when we had this climate change thing, I just thought, you know, big deal. So it's getting warmer and bit faster, no problem at all. They said, oh, the sea level's going to rise. So, oh yeah. A few years later, I looked at the sea level. This was, of course, before the internet. I looked at sea level, and it was rising at a rate of 8 inches a century, which is what it's been rising at for about 300 years. And I thought, well, hang on a minute. It's getting much warmer now. Why is the sea level stable? And then soon after that, the internet came along, and I started investigating it. And I found out that the sea level is the only reliable indicator, because the temperature varies so little. Oh, hello, Joe. What are you doing? It's nice to see you. My friend Joe is there. It's Carmine, but that's his other name. There you go. What a coincidence. It is good news, Joe. You'll see in the end, because it's the way we can all awaken. So anyway, I saw the sea level was barely rising. Now, if the sea level is barely rising, then neither can the temperature be rising, because the sea level can be measured by you and me if we go to the coast and put up those poles with a little line on them, photos of 100 years ago, and you suddenly notice something, that in fact the sea level is incredibly stable. Now, if the temperature was rising, as they say it will rise by a metre or more, which is 3 feet in English, and it's still rising at a foot a century, up from 8 inches a century, which is slightly more bugger all than bugger all was. Anyway, that led me to investigate the motivations behind global warming, and the motivation is basically for the United Nations to have a global warming carbon tax, which is a tax on CO2 emissions, and they couldn't do that without a world government to have a world tax, which we don't really want. Thank you. So that would lead to carbon rationing, which means that you would get something called energy credits or carbon currency, where everyone is given a certain amount of energy they can use per year, and if you use more than that, you have to buy extra at a huge cost. And that's what the plan is. So now you know what the global warming agenda is. You realise that it's actually something to enslave us all and to take away our power and to take away our cars. And basically, we want to fight it. We don't want to go along with it. So that was the biggest illusion. Now, the next thing was, I never thought in all my life I would have to explain the difference between men and women to you. Because, you know, a 3 or 4-year-old will see their parents in the bath or see their brothers or sisters naked and say, boy, girl, you know, that's it. Now, some of the things in life are so obvious that you will get them as a very young child. And believe me, that never changes. So just because a boy gets to 16 or 18 and has a surgeon who should know better mutilate them and remove all their male parts and create a monster underneath their trousers, which is supposed to be, is it called a male vagina or something, a neo-vagina, that's right. Now, believe me, nobody ever in the million years wants to get near one of those. You know, that represents everything in the world. Oh, Victor's come to join in. He always comes to join in. That represents everything that we really don't want to have in life, is a neo-vagina. And the bloody cheek of them, not only are they saying, well, you know, we have allowed ourselves to be mutilated by surgeons who are supposed to be saving lives and fixing things that are wrong, who's chopped off not only my reproductive system, but my urinary system and my sexual organs, and grafted on some breasts and given me female hormones, and I am a woman just like every other woman. Well, no, you're not. End of. But now you can actually get prosecuted for saying that. There are countries now which, if you misgender someone, where they say that they are a woman and they're actually born a man and they'll always be a man and their DNA will be male, and on the surface they've just erased the bits that made them male and covered them up, and their face is still male and their voice is off of male. Well, sorry, you're a man who, for some mysterious mental illness reason, imagine that you're a woman, because you can't think you're a woman or feel you're a woman, because a man doesn't know what it feels like to be a woman. It's not possible. You only know what your body feels like. You don't know what anyone else feels like. You don't know what another person feels like. You certainly don't know what it feels like to be the other sex, because you are whoever you are. And in fact, you are just yourself, and the body is the vehicle. It's like the car. You're not the car you're driving. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna. I've never done this. I've done loads of live chats on Periscope. It's the first one I've done on YouTube, simply because the quality is far better and gets seen by more people. So we're doing this today. And, you know, the time has come where not only are the people who are aware of this nonsense, we have to stand up and say it, even if we're going to be prosecuted, because basically, you know, if 1 million people stand up and say, if you're born a man, you'll always be a man, you're not a real woman, you can't turn into a woman, you know, are they going to fill all the prison cells with people who are denying sex change? And, you know, it's nonsense. You know, they got rid of the poll tax, which was something good, which I won't go into now, but believe me, it's a lot fairer that everyone pays their share instead of one person in a house paying everything, everyone else getting a free ride. And they didn't like it because it meant that all the passengers, all the cheats and people who sponged off everyone else had to pay their fair share, and they didn't like it, so they rioted. That's just unpleasant human nature, and the mob won that one, which was a great shame. But the thing is that it does mean that the British and the world people can stand up against this tyranny. And if you stand up and say, I will not take this, a man is not a woman and never can be, you know, are they going to really round us all up and put us in camps like they did in Russia? I hope not. So in the end, reality always has to win, because there's nothing else. You know, if you've got a cloth over something and you lift it up and you tell the children, oh, you know, there's monsters under the cloth, and you pick it up, there's a cake, then the children will laugh at you. So no, it's a cake, it's not monsters. And all this global warming nonsense, they're telling you, oh, there's this monster of global warming. Well, history has already proved that warming is better, climate optimums, and it gets warm a lot faster than it is now, and cold a lot faster than it is now. And there are plenty of Holocene diagrams of the temperature for the last few million years where it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And we're in one of those up bits, and the CO2 is completely irrelevant to it. It has no relationship to it at all, because firstly, as it warms, just like a bottle of fizzy water, the CO2 rises to the top as it gets warmer and goes into the air. And there's no reason that the CO2 emissions are doing anything, because in fact the CO2 emissions are the sign of the economy doing well, because as the CO2 has gone up in a hockey stick, the lifespan has gone up in a hockey stick, and the economy has gone up in a hockey stick for the entire world, because in fact the CO2 are a proxy for success and long life. So what they're actually trying to do is to stifle business and stifle your life, because the less CO2 there is, the more we're going back to the dark ages. Now, the thing is, people have to see this, and to me, it was obvious. And what I discovered very quickly on the internet is what is obvious to me. You know, you can't turn into a woman. Global warming is a good thing, and CO2 is a good thing. Hang on a minute, it's not obvious, because all these idiots, these people who believe authority rather than check the facts themselves, they're the ones we have to win over. So what's happening? We're getting more and more rubbish, more and more nonsense floating to the top, so that eventually we can burn it away, because that's how it works. The light of truth burns away the dross and the rubbish of lies. And that's what we're going to do. And in the end, it'll be impossible for there to be any illusions, because what's obvious to you and me, enough times will be cleared out and uncovered, and other people will be able to see it just enough to end the system. Because once people realise they've been fooled, and global warming, A, wasn't man-made, B, wasn't that much warming because most of it's been adjusted, and C, would actually be a good thing, because people die in ice age. Say, oh my God, we've been fooled. These people in authority aren't there to help us. They're there to screw us over, to reduce the population, to have us under one world government without any gas boilers or cars to travel wherever we want to. And that is completely unfair. Oh, yeah, there they are. So I was looking for my notes. I can do this without notes. I have been doing it without notes, but the reason I have notes is so I don't miss anything and then realise afterwards I've forgotten it. So it's always best to have reminders, because otherwise you can't do it all over again. So these are the sort of things that have to be used as guidelines. And I find online it's impossible to change people's mind by talking to them. Don't ask me why. It's just that in writing, it just doesn't seem to have any power. But when I speak to people in person, it works, because I think maybe they just don't trust an unknown person online. Whereas when they see you and know who you are, it's very hard for them to accuse you of being a bloody liar when you've got no reason to be a liar. Because, you know, you get these idiots who say, oh, you must be working for the oil companies. Well, the oil companies don't actually have any say in this, because oil companies, apart from the people that dig up oil, are called energy companies, and they sell anything which is creating energy. Now, the wind farms and solar farms, which they're replacing our energy with, which are costing far more than ordinary power stations, up to a point of nuclear, which do provide base load, so I won't include them, but they are more expensive and more dangerous for various reasons. But the wind and solar don't actually do anything, because it costs more to build them and to set them up than it does to get anything out of them. Solar farms were a joke because, of course, they don't produce during the night, and the solar conversion rate is almost, was it 50–60% reached already? And once you get to 100%, you've got the limits of the amount of power you can get from solar, because it's very limited. You can only convert a very small amount because the light from the atmosphere is diffused so much that by the time it reaches the surface, there's very little power in it. It's too thin, basically. So you can run a spaceship on solar outside the atmosphere because there's no atmosphere in the way, but down here, the atmosphere takes out virtually all the solar power before it reaches the surface. So it's a scientific waste of time and money, but they're still doing it because the people who rent the land of the solar farms and wind farms get something like 10 times the market rate for doing so. And who is running it? Shell, BP, and all the people that the bloody idiots think are oil companies and big oil and fossil fuel. They're not. They sell energy. That's all they do. They don't care how they sell it. And with subsidies, they get far more money. But an electric car, that's another joke, because the point about an electric car, and apart from the fact it takes at least an hour to charge it, and you can't charge it outside your house if you don't have anywhere to park your car outside your house, you are actually paying for that electricity. I mean, if you're plugging in your car overnight, it costs less than petrol at the moment, but that's because there's competition. When there's no petrol, they'll put the prices up of charging your car. If you plug it in the street, you still have to pay for the electricity. They're not free, those chargers. But the point is that as soon as you actually run out of power, when you're in a car, you can send your wife, very funny, down to the petrol station with a can, or get somebody else, ring them up and say, can you bring me a can of petrol? And you fill it up, and then you drive to the local petrol station and fill up properly. Can't do that with an electric car. And the difference is with a petrol car, you've actually got a little meter that says, I am running out of petrol. I have 20 miles left, 10 miles left, 5 miles left. And guess what? Every time that meter is in a particular place, you can guarantee within 5 miles how far you can go, because you are dealing with a liquid that goes down and down and down and down. Now, if you are running the car from the same source as your electricals, you have a problem, because what's the difference between a nice sunny day like this where you don't have the heater on and you drive 100 miles and a normal British winter day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when it starts to get dark and it snows and it rains, and you've got to put the heater on and the wipers on and the lights on? You're not going to get 100 miles. So an electric car entirely depends on the weather and the light and dark, because believe me, if you get in the car at 2 in the afternoon, it says you've got 100 miles left, and at 4 in the afternoon it gets dark and it gets wet, it'll suddenly go from 100 miles to 3 miles. Now, if you're not somewhere with a charging point, I mean, even if it breaks down half a mile from a charging point, you haven't got a cable half a mile long. You can't go to the charging point and fill up with electricity to get it to the charging point. It's just all nonsense. But the electric car industry is by law, not by market forces, which are supposed to control these things. By law, by 2030 or 2035, you will not be able to buy any car that isn't electric. And believe me, there is nothing about electric cars that can change. You will never be able to have an electric car which doesn't have a battery, which doesn't run out of power, and that doesn't wear out after 5 or 10 years, because those batteries will get worse and worse, as will solar panels. The batteries and solar panels wear out very quickly and they create less and less power over time because they wear out. Their molecular structure no longer does what it can do, because the chemical reactions that they are using are being used up, just like a car battery wears out. Now, half the weight and half the price of an electric car is its battery. And if you're going to get an electric car that costs you £30,000 or £40,000, and guess what? When you've had it 6 or 7 years, the battery will go. Now, the car itself will probably be worth about £2,000 or £3,000 by then, because the depreciation on those things is incredible for obvious reasons. And then what happens? Oh, isn't that funny? What coincidence. Anyway, what happens is that you need a new battery. How much does that cost? Oh, £7,000. Now, in insurance terms, if you're spending more on a replacement than the car is worth, it's a write-off. Now, if your car's worth under £5,000 after 7 or 8 years, which it probably will be, and you need a battery that's going to cost £7,000, is it worth it? I don't know. I doubt it. And who's going to buy a second-hand electric car? Because it's like buying a flat with a 40-year lease. You know, it's worthless because every year it's going to be worth less and less. If you buy a 3-year-old electric car, for example, you might pay £10,000. I don't know. There isn't really a particularly big second-hand market that I'm aware of. But in a few years' time, the car will be worthless because that battery is going to be worn out. They don't tell you this. It's not in the little book where you buy it. I mean, these Nissan Leafs are incredible because, you know, you get these big Teslas that could do 250 miles when the sun's in the right direction and the temperature's right. But the Nissan Leaf, I think, is 68 miles on a charge. What the hell use is a car that can do 68 miles before you have to plug it in for 2 hours? Search me. Anyway, I think I've made the point about electric cars, but the only reason electric cars and wind turbines and solar panels exist is because they're taking money from us to pay for them. Without the subsidies, nobody would have made them. And you don't make technology that's not fit for purpose. An electric car, I've already explained why it isn't. Wind turbines turn randomly. You can't store the energy because it's too much energy to store. And the batteries would cost billions to make them. They take up more land than the wind turbines do. And you can't regulate it for demand. And when they go too fast, they have to be stopped. And when they don't go at all, they need backup. And the backup is actually going the whole time. So you don't need the wind turbines because you can run them on the diesel backup or the petrol backup or whatever else they're using. And the wind turbines have no function at all. And, you know, if people know this, they say, well, why have they got wind turbines? They are like bumper cars. Why have you got wind turbines at all? Well, they make money for people. That's it. They are just money-making things. It's a pyramid scheme. The product is absolutely irrelevant. Who's paying for them? We are through our energy bills. So this is evil. This is Satan. Nobody else would treat human beings like that except Satan. And you and I, who are watching this, know about this. But what we have to do is, A, to explain to other people, and B, to spread this video as far and wide as possible, because I've spent 20 years learning this and communicating this. And the time has come when every single element of the system comes together to be explained as one thing: good against evil, end times. We are clearing all the garbage away. We're clearing all the nonsense away. This has been thrown at us not to ruin us or to be run by Satan, but to get us to reject Satan, because you do not have carbon taxes without consent. You do not have the EU without consent. You don't have any ghastly no, I can't, Joe, sorry. Don't have any ghastly rules that are there to protect you without consent, because the point is, the only reason people vote for this shit is because it's fear. They're scared of being burnt alive through climate change and flooded by sea level rise. Of course, anyone who knows O-level science can work out this is impossible, because there isn't enough ice at the right temperature in Greenland to melt that much. You'd need about 4 or 5, 6, 7 minimum degree temperature rise, going by the past ends of ice ages when we did have temperature rises like this. Every single temperature can be connected to the sea level from the past ice ages. And it's not possible to melt that much ice at the temperatures we have now. It can't be done. So it's physically impossible. There isn't enough energy in the system. You can't create heat from nowhere. So that's your ice ages, that's your sea level rise and the global warming thrown in the bin. It's just there to put people under their thumb and to make them give up their basic rights. And we will not accept this. So if people give up their consent and say, we will vote for a party like UKIP, like the Brexit party, that doesn't have carbon taxes, doesn't believe in all this, which is what they've done in America, and Trump has been the leader in this. Trump is now saying global warming is nonsense and we won't have all this crap. He's brought back the light bulbs, the proper light bulbs, and various other things, rolling back all Obama's diabolical regulations, allowing oil to flow again. And, you know, even when these idiots see how well America is doing under these removing regulations, they're still saying, but what about global warming? Well, fuck your global warming. It doesn't exist. I would say no, because I wouldn't want to be stranded out in Wales with an electric car, because I do these long journeys and I couldn't rely on an electric car that would get me to Wales, and I'd have to sit in a petrol station or plug in, look on the internet for 17 miles to drive to the nearest electric point, plug in and wait 3 hours before I go home. It's not practical. You know, they're not fit for purpose. Unless you're driving around locally, you might as well have a bloody moped. You know, the sort of journeys you're going to do in an electric car, you can do on a scooter. You don't need a car to do it. And until recently, or a while ago, I always had a scooter because they'd done useful things. And your car's not required. Mind you, oh, sorry, Joe. You never swear at all, do you? It's just making a point. It is making a point. Where you know, credit where it's due. Sometimes you've got to make a point, but I won't do it again. Not this video. You always get one in if you can manage it. Anyway, so hopefully people will get the big picture from this. It's been simplified and reduced down to its bare bones, so that as many people as possible can see this and know that I'm not working for an oil company or have any interest in any of these businesses. You know, if I got paid for this, I'd be doing it on television and wouldn't be doing it from my little bedroom on YouTube. So, you know, I don't get paid for this. I spend hours learning all this and putting it together because I understand it and it needs to be known, it needs to be said. So I'm just going to check on my notes here to see that I haven't missed anything, because one of the rules when you're teaching people things is don't give them too much information in one go, because you're learning the new stuff and then you add 5, 6, 7, 8. You'll be like, I've got to date myself. Anyway, you add all this information and they forget the first thing you told them. So you want to learn 2 or 3 things very well, very clearly, and then you can communicate them to others, because I'm not doing a university lecture with exams or anything like that where you've got to learn it and get the whole syllabus in it. This is an incredibly simple message that what you and I think is obvious is not obvious to other people. And we have to clear the illusion. We have to allow people to say that, you know, what we are not supposed to say, what we shouldn't say, if it's true, has to be said. Is it true? Well, I know it's true because I've done my research and I can prove it. And don't get these idiots telling you, oh, you can't prove global warming isn't real. Coronavirus debate, well, I deliberately didn't mention that today because coronavirus is not an illusion as such. It's just a bloody nuisance. You know, it's probably a weapon designed by the Wuhan lab, which has been working on these bats and other things for years to try and find out more about the viruses. And for one way or another, it escaped. There's no doubt that it originated there. And what happened was all the workers in Milan, where my dentist got it, were from China. They had 100,000 Chinese workers in Milan. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. But what happened was they went back to China for Chinese New Year just at the very time this came out and brought it back to Italy when they came back to work, which is why Italy is the hub of it in Europe, and it's all over Europe. But coronavirus is just an unfortunate accident, really, whether it's deliberate or not. I don't really think it's connected to this. It's showing people how to live without going to work every day. Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah, exactly. That's why they're making such a fuss about it, because I think it is germ warfare. Otherwise, it would be like every other virus, and we wouldn't be under lockdown. I don't want to confuse people by bringing in today's news, because, you know, this is a very new and hopefully temporary thing, and there's no illusion or confusion with coronavirus. It's just a blooming disaster. So, you know, the changes that come about through it will be useful because people won't feel they have to work every day from the office, that you know, my goodness, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that, and they'll be in their houses learning how to play the piano and paint and draw and sing and everything else. And you know, if you can't do things in one place, you'll do them in another place and be able to do all the things you couldn't do before because you're stuck in the house and you've got nothing else to do. And you might find that you can write a book and make more money writing a book when you're locked up in the house for 6 weeks than you would do working in a year. So, you know, it's got a side to it which is giving people the freedom to do things they didn't. How long will it last? Nobody knows. That's another thing. Impossible to make predictions in an open system, which is why all the climate predictions, all the economic predictions, and the virus predictions are impossible. But they'll still do it because they get paid, and they're not paid by results. So never trust these professionals. Oh, there's somebody singing outside. It's not a football chant either. You just walk past singing something. Anyway, so these are the end times, because what's happening is all the evil, all the garbage was always there. It's just floating up to the surface. Now, the great thing is that if your swimming pool is full of rubbish and you get the man with the net, now if you can get all the rubbish to float to the top instead of having to go down to the bottom and pick it up, or it might be dirty, it might be so dark you can't see the muck in the bottom of the swimming pool, so you just leave it there for years. It's always there. You're outside my house, you can't come in, it's illegal now. So basically what we're doing is we are making the dirt at the bottom of the swimming pool lighter than water, and it's all floating up to the top. We're coming here with our nets and clearing it out, so we'll have a nice clean pool. But we can't actually clean it if we can't see the dirt. And all these liberals and social justice warriors and the like are blind to the dirt. They think the dirt is chocolate and it's poo. All that global warming nonsense is not chocolate, it is shit. And what you do with shit is you don't leave it lying on your carpet, you pick it up and throw it away. And until they see the difference between chocolate and poo, we're going to be stuck. But the point is, more videos like this come out, and the more people that see it, it'll be harder and harder for the unbiased person who knows that I'm not trying to con them, because I don't get paid for doing this. And I've done all my own research, and the scientists online are incredibly helpful. So all the climate scientists are what you would call public relations men. They all go on Facebook and talk about it. So do I. Because they're completely destroying the world. They're trying to say up is down and good is bad and bitter is sweet and all the false prophets. Obama is the savior and all this crap. And it's not true. And just because they say it and they promote it doesn't ever make it true. And, you know, technically everyone is different. Everyone is unique. And you can't take 1,000 people, put them in the same place and let them grow up and they'll all come up the same, because we'll all be unique. And we're designed to be unique. Nobody's designed to be the same. And you're not born a computer which has got no programs. You get programmed throughout your life. So all computers are identical and they're only as good as their programs. Every human being is unique. Well, they might get turned on by poo, but it'll still make them ill. That's your issue, Joe. Thank you. Yeah, and sorry I didn't speak to you on the phone the other day. That wasn't deliberate. I was already talking to someone else. And it was bedtime as well. You must phone earlier. Anyway, so hopefully we are getting the point that we are picking up all the nonsense floating up to the surface so we can burn it away. We've all got the flamethrowers of truth. We're burning away all the rubbish so it gets charred and blows away as harmless charcoal dust. And it's a process which I would say is inevitable, because nobody can sustain lies forever. Nobody can sustain nonsense. But the point about global warming is there's so much money involved that they don't care, because they know they'll be found out sooner or later. Because believe me, in 10, 20, 30 years and it doesn't warm, there'll be nothing left, because they can't maintain adjusted warming forever, especially when the ice grows. Because if the ice grows, exactly, when the ice grows, the satellites show this Arctic getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They can't fake it. So in the end, the global warming can't be faked, because no matter how many lines they draw on a graph, if the ice is growing and the sea isn't rising, then the temperature clearly isn't rising and they're faking it. So it's this stuff which is common sense, obvious 10-year-old science stuff. You know, if you told a class of 10-year-olds this global warming stuff, they'd say, but you can't make energy from carbon dioxide, it's not a fuel. Well, that's obvious to a 10-year-old, but a liberal will say, oh, carbon dioxide can make the temperature rise by 6 degrees. We'll fill your room with carbon dioxide, you won't need any heating. What a maroon. You know, they have no understanding of basic physics or anything else. and hot air rises. The warmer the air gets, the further up it goes. So you can't really keep very much in with carbon dioxide, because if the air is warmer, it just keeps going upwards. You can't actually hold it in, because water vapor holds it in, because it is, well, it's not solid, it's liquid, but liquid is compressed. It's condensed matter, as is solid. So glass and water will hold back the heat, because it has to fight its way through all the water molecules, the glass molecules. But heat doesn't fight through a gas. Heat rises through a gas. It convects through a gas. Hotter air is lighter and it rises. And if there isn't water vapor and there isn't glass or anything else that's solid to hold that gas in, it will just float to the top, whether it's CO2 or methane or anything else. Because unless it's compressed by a very thick, heavy gas, in which case the compression will make it harder, because there'll be more molecules in the gas. That's your molarity from O-level chemistry coming back, as it is on Venus, which is why Venus is so hot, because the gas pressure on Venus is so much, it takes a heck of a lot. And it's also got lots of sulfuric acid, which is not actually gas, but it is liquid. And liquid is very compressed, which is why 10 degrees of centigrade, you put your hand in 10 degrees centigrade of air, it will not feel particularly cold, because there aren't many molecules of air. Put your hand in 10 degrees of water, it will feel freezing, because 10 degrees of water is solid, packed in molecules of 10-degree cold. The same applies in the atmosphere. O-level physics, simple stuff. You can't teach a fish to climb a tree. Well, I don't think people are that stupid. I will sing a song and play on the piano next time on Facebook Live or on YouTube, because that's what I normally do, but I don't mix them up. It's not appropriate. You don't get your lecturer at university saying, oh, before I finish, I'm just going to get out my ukulele. I'm leaning on the laptop. It just doesn't get done. I can imagine they would rather be on stage singing and dancing than giving a lecture, but one or the other, but not both. Only at the end of year parties would they do that. Anyway, I think I've pretty much explained everything, because anything else I will say will be repeating myself. But what I want is to have a nice, simple, closed argument, which is very easy to understand, very easy to follow, and doesn't have any loose ends or gaps in it. Nice watertight argument, and not too long, so people get bored and don't watch it till the end. Now, Miles, why do I always forget names? Anyway, I'm putting this on Miles's page now, because Miles is the great man who shares all this stuff on his Facebook page and makes these videos every day or so. And also Simon Parks, who taught me a lot of what I know. I can't put it on his page because his page doesn't have videos for other people, but if Simon wishes to share this on his own page, I'll be very happy for him to do so, because they are the two people that helped me the most. Miles Johnson, that's it. So Miles Johnson and Simon Parks have helped me the most in this particular thing, and I will be posting on their pages anyway and sharing this with Simon's group, which I'm a member of, and hopefully this will become viral. Bloody now, you know, everything's viral at the moment, isn't it? Yes. Yes, as long as you haven't got stress incontinence, you'll be all right there. And you know, wear a nappy if necessary. And I'll say goodbye to everyone, and nice to catch up with you, Joe. And I will now end the stream. Oh, there's another incontinence. Yeah, and good night for now. Goodbye. Thank you.